Hi, I'm Heather. I'm a sexuality empowerment coach, and this week I want to talk about safer sex practices with y'all. I find often when people are having these conversations, if they're even having them, a couple of things are happening. Number one, they're not actually broad enough to provide people a lot of information. Or number two, people aren't having them because they don't know how to have them. So I wanted to give you guys a quick formula today that will help you have your safer sex chat in a way that covers a lot of information and, lets you know what kind of questions you should be answering and kind of things that you should be talking about. So basically, all you got to remember is the three P's, okay? Your practices, your partners, and your paperwork. And before we get into this, I want to dispel one myth. Your STI status has nothing to do with your hygiene. You are not clean or dirty if you have an STI or don't have an STI, okay? You're not dirty if you have a cold. You're not clean if you're free from allergies this week. Your health and your hygiene are unrelated topics. So let's first put that out there. And now we can jump into things that I've gotten that out of the way. Number one, practice. What are your safer sex practices? For some people, it's just condoms for vaginal or anal penetration. Well, that's great, but what about oral penetration? What about digital penetration? You can pass STIs orally, right? Chlamydia, syphilis, these are things that can live in the mouth. HIV is a lower risk of transmission, but it can happen. HPV can be passed digital, and not even like our big STIs, but also things like bacterial vaginosis, upsetting the pH balance of the vagina. All these things can happen through non-protected or non-barriered um, digital penetration. So let's keep that in mind too, okay? Let's talk about swapping fluids. A lot of people think, oh, don't exchange semen because STIs, but what about vaginal fluids kind of rubbing on areas of the body? What about swapping kissing and saliva fluids? A lot of people don't have any conversation about that, but cold sores, HIV-1, or sorry, HSV-1 is something that can be passed through saliva exchange, right? And actually HSV-2, which they both kind of live both orally and genitally now. But those are things that get passed through bodily contact and through saliva exchange. So how are you factoring that in? I know some people that are, they're really, really conscious uh, about germs in general in life. So what they've done is they've developed a latex swimsuit that their partner wears for engaging in sexual activity. And that's what that partner needs to feel safe and actually be able to have sexual intercourse with people. So if that's what you need to do to feel safe, go for it. And you know that you're having really, really safer sex. So part number two, our partners. What are your partner's practices? And I'm not actually talking about numbers here. If you and all of your partners who you engage with are practicing really, really low risk, even risk-free, or have really fantastic safer sex practices, then it doesn't really matter the number of partners you have because your practices are awesome. If you only have one, two partners over your life, but you guys don't practice any sort of safer sex, you're actually engaging in riskier behavior than the people with heaps of partners. So, what is your partner doing out there, right? Number one, what are their safer sex practices? And then number two, are they actually following them? If you say that you use condoms for oral penetration, are you really doing that out in the wild, right? And it's time here to be really honest about our behavior. A lot of us like to say we follow safer sex practices, but then when we're like out in the wild, out in the real world, we're like, oh, I forgot a condom, but it's just oral, so I'll take my chances. And that's an okay risk to, evaluate and make. You get to evaluate your risks and make your choices, but that factors into your overall sexual health and your overall sexual risk. So just be aware of what risks you're choosing to take so that you can make an informed decision and so that you can share with new lovers and new partners, where you're at so they know what level of risk they're engaging with. Number three, paperwork. The reason I put this one last is because STI testing is not the salvation that some people think it is, right? Testing covers a specific window. If I run out and have a bunch of unprotected and non-barriered sex on Tuesday, but I go get tested on Thursday, The sex I had on Tuesday will not show up on Thursday's test, or at least not all of it. It's way too soon. Things like HIV can take 2 to 12 weeks to develop enough antibodies to, produce a positive test. Also, testing only covers up to a specific window. It only covers my actions until Thursday. If I go out on Friday and engage in another bunch of high risk, unsafer sex practices, I've already voided Thursday's results because I don't know what I did on Friday. So testing is a great practice to do, and I think it's an important part of our sexual health, but testing doesn't prevent the transmission of STIs, okay? It only helps you know whether or not you've got any. Also, be really specific about what you're testing for. Different clinics and different practices and different doctors test for different things. So you might think you're getting, a full workup or a full panel, but ask what that actually means. Does it cover Hep A, B, C? Does it cover HIV? Does it cover HSV? Most walk-in clinics do not cover HSV, and you need to go to your family doctor and request that. So work that in. What are you actually testing for? And where are you testing? I think you need to test for any area that's being penetrated. So if you're having anal sex, make sure you're getting your anal cavity checked out. If you're having oral sex, get your throat swabbed. Sometimes these are areas that we don't think as needing testing for, but if you're engaging in sexual activity in that area, you do. So I hope that helps you today. I hope that you walk away feeling a little bit more empowered about, how to have the safer sex conversation with people. And remember, 3 Ps: practices, partners, paperwork. And those are the things you need to cover when you're chatting about safer sex with people. See you next week.